Hello, everyone. My name is Joey Dabrowski. I'm coordinator of the Climate Education Coalition at earthday.org. And my guest today and yours is Katarzyna Wrona, the director of the Department of Clean Air and Climate Negotiations at the Ministry of Climate and Environment of Poland. Kasia also has a very important role right now as Poland has the presidency over the EU Council, and she chairs the EU's Working Party on International Environmental Issues, which covers adaptation, mitigation of the EU, as well as finance and transparency in preparation for COP30. And Kasia is a great friend of Earth Day, and I must say that Kasia is a great climate negotiator. She really made this space inclusive for international climate negotiations. And if you ever have a pleasure to see her in action at the COP or at any other climate conference, she's a real rock star. And for sure, you'll have some of that at our interview today. She's a great expert as well. And it will be really, it's great to talk with you, Kasia. How are you doing?
Thank you, Johnny, for this amazing introduction. I'm blushing. Great to see you, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for this invitation. I'm good. We're almost at the end of our presidency, but the most intensive part is still ahead of us. So we're right now preparing for the final phase and the negotiating session of UNFCCC in Bonn that is going to start next week.
Yeah, you've said you just came from the final negotiations back in Brussels, and maybe before we talk about the core of our conversation, which is climate education, NDCs, and the COP, maybe first, if you could explain to our audience what is your role as a director for climate negotiations in the Polish presidency of the EU Council, and how does the presidency shape the EU policies as well? How does it impact the everyday lives of Europeans?
Sure. So as the director of the department that is responsible in the Ministry of Climate and Education for the international climate negotiations, I happen to be also the Poland's lead negotiator. This means I take part normally with all the EU member states before we start into the formal negotiations at the level of the UN in reaching the EU common position. And now, during the Polish presidency, I have the pleasure of coordinating this work. This means that I chair the working party that you mentioned, Working Party on the International Environmental Issues Climate Change, that meets once a month and discusses all the pertinent subjects that are going to be negotiated twice a year in Bonn and then at COP during the Conference of Parties. So my role is to coordinate the works, to look for consensus among member states, to facilitate the work, also to suggest some subjects. But then in the end, we do not tell member states what they have to do. The role of the presidency is to suggest, facilitate, and then reach consensus. How does this influence the people? While the work itself is not that visible, I think to the people, the consequences of the work touch upon their lives every day. And this people usually think on the level of climate change, but it's in fact way more pragmatic, because the policies which we agree upon on the international level that then influence the level of the EU and then go one step lower to the national legislations, for example, improve the quality of air that we all breathe in the EU. They also influence our capacity to adapt to climate change. We all see that the consequences of the climate change influence us with the extreme weather events that cause huge damages in the villages, in the cities. They are very tough for the agriculture. And the policies that we implement help people prepare to avoid the loss and damage that's caused by it. It also influences very directly the way we produce energy. the energy that is produced in the EU is increasingly being decarbonized. The production that is happening in the EU is also more and more decarbonized. This means that the share of the renewable energies is growing, and this is the target.
And maybe I will ask this question more about, you say you coordinate, you try to facilitate the position, and you mentioned agriculture, you mentioned the air, the energy. I'm thinking, also about the future policy, which is the Clean Industrial Deal of the EU. Do you think that it is challenging to get all countries on board? Is it a hard task? And what do you think are right now we could say the most severe challenges for progress? And also, do you think that disinformation is one of them?
Yes. Before I get to disinformation, I would like to say that the Clean Industrial Deal is a very important step and showed by the European Commission, showing that the European Union is still on track, and we are committed to our climate targets. We have climate targets that are embedded in the EU legislation, and Clean Industrial Deal is there to show us how we can get there. And this is the major challenge. The major challenge is to match the ambition with the reality and with all the challenges that lay ahead of us. Because the truth is that decarbonization costs a lot of money, because it changes fundamentally the way we produce energy and also the way we produce, in fact, everything. The main challenge, I would say, right now is to find a way to bridge the investment gap that is needed to implement all the policies that will lead us to the fulfillment of the targets that we set ahead of us.
Yeah, I think, it also on the international sphere, we talk so much about climate finance, right? And this COP30, its president, he has already outlined some thematic groups for COP, and I have seen that one of them is going to be particularly for finance ministers. As I understand, he and the Brazilian presidency, they really urge to get more finance inside, and the same is, of course, on the EU level, because we need just more funding into climate infrastructure and into energy. And so, do you think that massive and targeted disinformation against climate change towards people, is it stopping finance? Is it preventing it?
I think it's a huge problem, and we learned it in Poland the hard way, and that's why we chose fighting disinformation and advocating for integrity of information, basically in the public sphere, in terms of climate policies as well, as one of the main subjects of our presidency. We see a massive effort foreign interference into this sphere. And it's a problem mostly because it influences the support of the people. It undermines the public trust into the policies. And therefore, we see a need to address it in a systematic manner. And over our presidency, we've had some very insightful debates among ministers and really at all levels. You know very well that we also discussed it on the level of climate negotiators, what can be in fact done to tackle this challenge. And it's not easy. And I'm very glad and proud that we started this discussion during our presidency. And I hope that it's going to be continued beyond.
We definitely support that, and we'll also get back to the vision for the future and for the COP by the end of our conversation. But now maybe let's explore what the Polish presidency has laid out. I think that it's a very innovative approach. Poland is a champion for promoting education as a tool against disinformation within the EU. You have mentioned it's a matter of national security for Poland. So For our viewers, I'm also Polish, just like Kasia, and for us, it's a very particular issue here. And so, how climate education and countering disinformation has been addressed by the Polish presidency of the EU specifically, and what are the other priorities for the presidency as well?
Yes.
In case of climate.
Basically, if you look at the priorities of the presidency, we chose security as the main subject of the presidency. And security has many faces, and one of it is information security. It's the energy security, and it's the climate security. And we see a very strong interaction between all of them. In terms of fighting disinformation, we were wondering in the beginning of our presidency how best this can be addressed. We see a lot of very structured and well-funded actions that target the public opinion in Poland and in Europe. These actions have very well defined target, and they aim at undermining the public trust in the climate change itself, and in the sense of the policies that we implement in order to tackle it. So when thinking about it, we thought that we have to start at the very bottom. In order to address this huge challenge that is all over social media, and it's very difficult to control it, we need to focus on building resilience among the population. And one way to do it is to promote climate education, starting from the early stages of the education, to basically increase the understanding of what are we dealing with when we're talking about climate change. Why is it happening? What are the consequences of it? How can we address it? And what are the consequences of not addressing it? And we believe that once it's a tool, in fact, for the people to understand why sometimes we have to implement difficult policies that are costly, that might be challenging, that take time. But we believe that once people understand, it will be easier for them also to get them on board, because we need people to trust that the policies that are suggested are for their benefit. So I think it was a right pick, and I'm very happy that we decided to go this way. As you might know, in Poland we have started with the initiative of integrating the climate education into the educational portfolio. So we're trying to lead by example. We also see that it goes beyond the formal education. So in our ministry, there is a whole strategy that is being prepared in order to address it also beyond the formal education, in the informal education sphere. We work very closely with civil society that is fully on board and shares the understanding of this issue and support us in this endeavor.
You've said it's the right pick about climate education and countering disinformation for the EU presidency. So in that case, how did you receive the opinion of other countries, other EU member states? Were they supportive of these priorities? And do you believe that other governments within the EU understand the urgency of investing in climate education and countering disinformation? Because Poland's position is very particular, but do other partners, do you think they follow?
Yeah, I think that the support is growing, and basically the awareness is growing. I feel like everybody felt that we are having an increased problem, and I'm glad that we started honest conversations about it during our presidency. As you know very well, we suggested this subject at the level of the climate negotiations on the coordination on the EU level. We suggested it for the consideration of member states. As as an interesting tool to promote basically this climate education in the context of fighting disinformation. And I must say it was very well received. I'm glad that we did it because it sort of led also the negotiators to go a little bit outside of their negotiating bubble and to see that in order for our policies to be effective, we need to reach outside of our departments, to the Department of Communication, in my case, for example, but also outside of our ministries, because we cannot be closed in our silos and just focus on the subject. It's so cross-cutting, and we have to work together. We have to see what our ministries of education and higher education are doing, because it's not only about building understanding and capacity and resilience to disinformation, but it's also about building skill force for the labor market of the future. Because if we understand that we're moving towards the economy that will be working in a fundamentally different way than it used to, that it's changing, we also have to change the workforce. And we also need to invest in the green skills. So it also refers to the higher education and to the work of the academia very closely with the business. So I think it was well received. It was sort of an eye-opener, and it was a call for action. I think that many negotiators came back and started checking what is happening in their countries in terms of that. Many told me that they reached out to other ministries. So I'm glad that we initiated this interministerial cooperation in this aspect.
Well, and definitely, as you were saying, education can be the means for the implementation, the support, right? Sometimes it is the first step because you need the support of the population for what the government is doing, right? For the green policies, you need the understanding of the people, and also definitely you need the green workforce that will at the same time power this green transformation. And I think that all climate negotiators are experts in climate change because they perfectly know what is going on. And I think also with us, with climate advocates, we sometimes forget that many people don't possess this knowledge, this skill, and it's so important that we all have it. Not just a group or a bubble, as you said, right? However useful it would be, but that we all have it as a society. And so you've mentioned that, I think you've mentioned the meeting in Gdańsk of EU climate negotiators, where the earthday.org climate education NDC tracker was presented to EU climate negotiators, thanks to you and your team, and also UNICEF Poland. And so far around the world, more than 40 countries have integrated climate education into their NDCs. We're also sharing the NDC tracker with many countries as a tool. It was also presented to EU climate negotiators. Do you think that the NDC tracker could help governments to focus their efforts on climate education? Do you think it is a meaningful tool for EU countries as well to compare to the model language of other countries?
I think it's a very interesting tool, and I'm glad we could see it during and show it to all the climate negotiators. I think it's a very interesting tool that serves as a peer pressure to see that many already other countries, and among them many developing countries, have identified the need to include this subject and to bring this subject up in the agenda and to include it in the NDC, which means showing that this is a tool to implement the climate policies that they have. So in this sense, very interesting tool to see who is doing what and how. I think this is also a tool that fosters cooperation because it encourages negotiators and also officials to reach out and to cooperate to see how to best include this subject, to learn from each other. This was also a part of the presentation that we saw, that there are many ways to integrate this subject in the curricula, and what is the best way, what is the most effective way. We can all learn from each other, avoid the mistakes, learn from also the mistakes that we did, and in this sense, it is certainly a very interesting tool. So congratulations on its development.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to showcase this to all EU negotiators, and I think it's definitely kind of a peer pressure tool. Sometimes when we meet with governments at the conferences, we receive this question: how could we be in category 1? and so there is this. And then the work starts, right? And they're out there, they update their commitments. For our viewers who are still eager to see the NDC tracker, it's on earthday.org website under the Climate Education NDC tracker. It opens with a statement from Minister Marina Silva, the Minister of Climate Change and Environment of Brazil. And yeah, it's a very interesting tool, and we'll also be updating it with new features in the future, especially for COP, towards COP, and for Bonn, because many countries in the last weeks they have already actually moved to category 1. Many countries did, so we'll be updating it in the future. So I could say that we have started the Polish presidency of the EU in January with the climate education, and we'll finish it with climate education at the UN conference in Bonn in June. We'll be having a climate education reception on June the 20th at 5:30 p.m. I encourage all viewers who will be participating in Bonn to come to our reception. And we'll be also having a guest from the Polish presidency of the EU and also other climate negotiators. And this reception will focus on the accomplishments. And so moving more into the future, Kasia, what do you personally feel that are the largest accomplishments of the Polish presidency for climate, for education, for countering disinformation so far?
Yeah, I think that it's tempting to have an outcome that is tangible, but it will be difficult here because it's a process. And I think the most important part of this process was putting it in the spotlight, taking it from the margins into one of the main subjects that were discussed, in fact, by the EU in the framework of the Working Party. I think that you, as you well know, we're in the process of preparing the EU NDC, and of course we cannot prejudge this. This process will not be finalized during the Polish presidency. It will be finalized during the Danish presidency, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is somehow reflected also in the NDC. I think that would be my wish, and I hope this is what's going to happen. This would mean that the EU really acknowledges that is an important tool for not only countering disinformation, but also, as we said before, for the skills of the future. I think we also encouraged somehow. We raised awareness that disinformation is in fact not only a challenge; it's a matter of national security, and in the matter of also of the security of the entire EU. And I am pretty convinced that the conversations on how to work together to counter it, not only in the context of the climate education, but some sort of coordinated action on the EU level will be continued beyond the Polish presidency, and will result in some sort of coordinated approach towards this challenge.
How do you envision the future success of this narrative started by Poland, by your team?
Oh, I can dream. We'll see how the process goes, but we already see some focus and interest in the subject of climate disinformation showed by the Brazilian presidency of upcoming COP30. There is an initiative that they are developing together with the UN and UNESCO on the integrity of climate information, which we will be looking very carefully into how it develops. I think if it manages to gain enough support and wind, then it ideally would lead to some sort of declaration at COP. And we will see if this happens, and we will be surely supporting it from our side, and we'll be advocating also for the EU to support it.
Sure. So maybe we could end up with a declaration on this subject at the COP. And as you've said, it is climate education, countering climate disinformation. It's kind of on the edge of two very important subjects, because on one hand, it's climate change, on the other hand, it's security. So it kind of merges to my particular favorite, which is climate security. And I think that, in the times in which we live, where you have conflicts, you have war in the Ukraine, you have conflicts around the world, which climate change, whether we like it or not, will impact, and they also impact climate change in the other way around. It's very important, and I think it's going to gain traction. And do you think that this idea of countering climate misinformation with education could be the subject that could speak to all sides of the political spectrum, also to all sides of the society, also to climate deniers? Do you think that connecting climate change with security could be something that could speak to everyone?
Definitely. I mean, not to everyone, because we know very well that the disinformation comes from somewhere, and some have a vested interest in spreading it. So it surely will not convince them, but it may very well prepare all the others to address it with full understanding, with the capacity to judge the source of information, why is it spread, whether it's credible or not, and so on. And in this sense, absolutely, I think it has a great potential to gain a broad support on the international level. I think we in Europe are particularly vigilant to that, because we've experienced it the hard way. But the truth is that governments all around the world, the governments that implement climate policies that are not easy, in fact, that are costly, that have to be somehow explained to the people so that people support them, would benefit from that. So in this sense, I see a really important interest and the potential of support on the global level as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope that this theme in climate negotiations started by Poland will definitely support it as Earth Day all the way, and hopefully we can get a political change towards it with integrating climate education, with integrating with upskilling administration and also people towards countering disinformation. And maybe on this note, do you think that AI and social media is more an enemy here, or it could be a friend too?
I think it's just a medium, and it can be used in both ways. We see it being used against the integrity of information, and it provides a fantastic tool for that. but I think just as well it can be used against it. And I think that developing AI-based tools to verify the information, to fact check, and to make it available for all to see, in fact, would be also a way to go. But it's going to be a response to, because it's been surely discovered first by those that want to use it against the idea of climate change. But I've already heard that these ideas are being developed, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they work in practice. And I think the potential is there, and it is surely worth exploring.
Definitely. I think, it is something that really is on the headlines right now. Recently, I've been at the UNICEF festival in Konin, in Poland, and one of the Polish professors, Mr. Bogdan Chojnicki, has said, our largest challenge is how to get all the kids, how to win their time. That's what he said, how to win their time, because we're losing, because their time of students, of people, not just kids, of most people, right, is taken by the social media. How can we take it to even part of the time so that they spend it on climate? But at the other hand, why not integrating the education or the skills into where they already are, so into social media?
Yeah,
right?
I totally agree. I think we cannot be sort of locked in the past traditional ways of understanding education. Already the change between how I was educated and you were educated is fundamentally different, and we have to follow the trend, because social media is a powerful source of information for all, not only young people, but all, in fact. And integrating in an interesting way that would be engaging, that would make the people feel that it benefits them. We absolutely have to go this way, because we're not going to succeed if we turn climate education into boring lessons that no one will see as interesting, and they will be just another burden for the kids. We cannot go this way. So it's not only about what to do, but also how to do this. And I think from this perspective, we really have some great examples to learn from, because as we saw during the presentation that we had in Gdańsk, delivered with the cooperation of UNICEF and the Polish Youth Climate Council that works together with our ministry, there are fantastic examples from all around the world how we can do it in a very progressive way.
For our viewers who may be not familiar with this, with the EU process, Poland's presidency over the EU Council will be passed to Denmark by the beginning of July. Can you walk us through the transition, how it is like, and is it a landmark moment?
It's both a very symbolic moment and emotional one. I think that this is what we're expecting, but also a very structured one, because it's a symbolic role, but it's also a very organizational based role. So, but I want to let everyone know that no presidency works in a vacuum. We work together with the previous presidency and with the upcoming presidencies. So before taking up our role, we were following in the footsteps of the Hungarian colleagues, and they were keeping us very close so that we could learn, that we could see basically what portfolios will rest open, that we will have to take over. And this is what we are also doing with our Danish colleagues and friends. We're keeping them very close. We're in fact already integrating them into the meetings that we're having, so that this transition can be very smooth. And in practical terms, at the end of the presidency, we organize meetings at all levels so that the experts can pass on officially all the open remaining subjects. But it's just a formality, because the truth is that the Danish colleagues are already on board. They follow very closely. They know very well what's going on. They know very well what they will receive from us as pending subjects, and they are already working on it. So it's going to be smooth. I have no worries about that.
Do you think that if the subject of climate education, of countering disinformation, gets more traction and more countries integrated to the NDCs, then then some avenues of climate finance could be created for developing countries to support them to invest in climate education projects?
Mm-hmm. Climate finance is always a very tricky issue because, as we all know, there is no such public money that can come from outside to support all the needs. So the scarce climate finance, the public finance that comes from the developed to the developing countries, is always directed to where it's most needed and the most pressing issues. So it's usually the mitigation on the first place, as this is the way to stop the crisis from developing. It's more and more adaptation. We're talking also about the loss and damage. The issue has to be addressed on the level of the governments as well, because each government has its own educational portfolio that it basically develops and implements with the budgets that they have. And it does not necessarily mean that there's a need to have more money to add on to what already exists. It's sometimes a question of reviewing the program that you're having and seeing whether it is structured in the best way and looking for efficiencies inside already and redirecting the funding within the resources that are already possible. So I think this is the first and foremost I would look into this way. This is also how we are addressing it in Poland. It's not that miraculously there is a new budgetary line opening for the climate education to add it to the top of the portfolios that are already existing. It's arranging the program in a way that it's balanced and serves the purpose.
We already have a lot, so we need to focus on what we got, I think, and to use it in the best way possible. Thank you so much, Kasia, for this interview. Poland is really leading the way with the Polish presidency of the EU Council, promoting countering disinformation and also climate education. Climate education has been it's been announced that it's going to be added across the curricula of teaching in Poland. It was announced in February, and Poland is a real leader for climate education in Europe, and hopefully this will also spread to the other countries as well, and that we will have a more aware society, more skilled society, and that will go with a more effective and faster process of green transformation. Thank you again, Kasia, for your leadership on this, and looking forward to seeing you in Bonn and at COP30.
Thank you so much, Johnny. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and see you soon in Bonn.